Jim Rickards highlights the alarming state of the U.S. national debt and the potential consequences of rising debt levels. He delves into modern monetary theory, MMT, and critiques its validity in the context of the current economic landscape. Before we dive in, if you've ever thought about investing, the first link in the description takes you to Interactive Brokers, the platform I use. Understanding the debt crisis. The debt crisis is not just a looming threat, it is a reality that demands immediate attention. The United States is currently grappling with a national debt that exceeds $31 trillion. This staggering figure is more than just a number. It represents a significant burden on the economy. As Jim Rickards points out, the implications of this debt are profound and far-reaching. The debt crisis has its roots in a variety of factors, including excessive government spending, declining revenues, and an overall lack of fiscal discipline. The situation is further complicated by the rising interest rates, which increase the cost of servicing this debt. The U.S. is at a critical juncture where the decisions made today will impact future generations. Understanding debt to GDP ratio. The debt to GDP ratio is a crucial metric in assessing the health of an economy. It compares a country's public debt to its gross domestic product, GDP. A high ratio indicates that a country may struggle to repay its debt, while a low ratio suggests a healthier economic outlook. Currently, the U.S. debt to GDP ratio stands at over 130%. This is alarming, especially when compared to historical figures. In the early 1980s, the ratio was around 30%. Jim Rickards emphasizes that the threshold of 90% is critical. Beyond this point, additional borrowing leads to diminishing returns in economic growth. The consequences of rising debt. Rising national debt can lead to several adverse consequences. High levels of debt often result in increased interest rates, as the government competes with private borrowers for available capital. This can crowd out private investment, stifling economic growth. Moreover, rising debt can lead to inflationary pressures. As the government borrows more, it may resort to printing money, which can devalue the currency and lead to higher prices for goods and services. This inflation can erode purchasing power, disproportionately affecting lower-income individuals. High debt levels pose long-term fiscal risks. They constrain the government's ability to respond to economic downturns, potentially exacerbating crises. Historical evidence, particularly post-WW2, suggests that exceeding debt thresholds, often around 90% of GDP, can significantly impede economic growth and borrowing capacity. The role of modern monetary theory. Modern monetary theory, MMT, has gained traction in recent years, proposing that countries that borrow in their own currency can sustain higher levels of debt without dire consequences. Proponents argue that as long as a nation can print its own currency, it can manage its debt without defaulting. However, this perspective overlooks critical risks associated with high debt levels. While it is true that printing money can prevent default, it can also lead to inflation and currency devaluation. Furthermore, the international implications of excessive borrowing in a globalized economy cannot be ignored. Critics of MMT emphasize the importance of maintaining a balance between debt levels and economic growth. They argue that relying solely on monetary policy without addressing underlying fiscal issues can lead to long-term economic instability. Comparative Analysis, the case of Japan. Japan, with a debt to GDP exceeding 280%, is a unique case study in high debt and economic stability. Despite its high debt, Japan maintains low interest rates and stability, attributed to a strong domestic bond market and high savings rates. However, this model may not be replicable due to unique Japanese factors, contrasting with nations like the U.S. with different debt dynamics. Lessons from Japan's experience. Japan's experience highlights the potential risks of excessive debt. While the nation has avoided immediate crises, the long-term economic stagnation raises concerns. Slow growth and an aging population have compounded the challenges, leading to deflationary pressures. Moreover, Japan's high debt levels have limited its fiscal policy options. In the event of an economic downturn, the government may struggle to implement effective stimulus measures due to concerns about increasing debt. This scenario serves as a cautionary tale for other nations grappling with rising debt levels. Understanding currency and debt dynamics. The relationship between currency and national debt is complex. Nations that issue debt in their own currency, like the United States, have certain advantages. They can technically print money to meet debt obligations. However, this ability does not come without consequences. Inflation is a significant risk associated with excessive money printing. When a government increases the money supply without a corresponding increase in economic output, inflation can ensue. This devalues the currency, eroding purchasing power and potentially leading to hyperinflation. Furthermore, the perception of a country's fiscal health influences its currency value. If investors lose confidence in a nation's ability to manage its debt, the currency may weaken, leading to further economic instability. If you're concerned about your financial security and are thinking about investing, check out the first link in the description. It's the platform I use, Interactive Brokers. Click the link to learn more. The role of commercial banks. Commercial banks play a crucial role in the economy, particularly concerning money supply and lending practices. They influence how the central bank's policies translate into real-world economic impacts. Through their lending activities, commercial banks create money and extend credit, which directly affects economic growth. The dynamics between the central bank and commercial banks are intricate. While the central bank sets interest rates and regulates money supply, commercial banks determine how much of that money is actually lent out. This lending behavior can either stimulate or stifle economic activity, depending on the prevailing economic conditions. In times of economic uncertainty, banks may tighten lending standards, which can slow down growth. Conversely, when confidence is high, increased lending can spur investment and consumption, driving economic expansion. Impact of political decisions on economic stability. Politics significantly impacts economic policy. Political choices drive government spending, taxation, and debt levels. Recent shifts toward increased spending, while aimed at economic growth, can exacerbate debt. Political polarization hinders consensus on fiscal policy, risking economic instability. Fiscal stimulus measures. Rapid spending increases can lead to unsustainable debt levels. Taxation policies. Changes in tax policy can influence economic behavior and revenue generation. Regulatory changes. Shifts in regulations can impact business operations and economic growth. Future fiscal constraints. Higher debt may limit the government's ability to respond to future crises. Future projections. Growth or recession. The outlook for the U.S. economy remains uncertain. As national debt continues to climb, questions arise about the potential for growth versus recession. The critical debt-to-GDP ratio suggests that borrowing may no longer be an effective tool for stimulating growth. Analysts predict that the U.S. could face a prolonged period of economic stagnation if current trends continue. The risks of recession loom larger, particularly if inflationary pressures escalate or if global economic conditions deteriorate. Addressing these challenges requires careful consideration of fiscal policies, including spending cuts and revenue generation strategies. Failure to address rising debt levels could lead to significant economic consequences impacting future generations. Key considerations for future economic policy. Debt management strategies. Effective planning is essential to address rising debt levels. Inflation control. Measures. Policies must be implemented to mitigate inflation risks. Investment in growth. Fostering innovation and productivity will be crucial for long-term stability. Given these factors, a thoughtful approach to investing is crucial. I've found the Interactive Brokers platform to be a valuable resource. You can find it linked below. Go ahead and check it out.